Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Barton Seaver. I am so proud and thrilled that you did choose to join us on this morning, if you're on the Pacific Coast, afternoon on the eastern seaboard, wherever you are joining us from, welcome. As I said, my name is Barton Seaver. I am a proud Maine resident here on the ragged, delicious coast, a proud father and husband. I'm also a chef, author, seafood evangelist, but really just, well, food enthusiast. And grilling is my very favorite form of cooking, and we'll get into that. But just wanted to start off by saying thank you to Patrick Britton and the Rouxbe team for putting these on, and thank you to my partner Katie Rivera, who is behind the camera today. I'll be talking with her, and she might even chime in at some point, but this is going to be a little bit of freeform. And what we're doing today is just a meal that I absolutely love putting together, and this is based on a dish that I learned early on in my career called the steak, and well, you'll understand why once we get into it. So I've got a number of things in front of me, including one of my books, Where There's Smoke, which is my favorite of all of the 8 books that we've written. Well, it's all about cooking with smoke. And to me, smoke, well, that's the purpose of grilling. And speaking of, I'm actually going to dump my fire in here. So Katie, actually, will you come on over here before we start talking about the philosophy of grilling? Let's just talk about some wood chunks, right? So this is my Weber grill, trusty 18-inch. I've had it for, well, I've had this one for several years. The one prior to this I had for, well, about 20 years. And there's a reason for that. It's because they're darn brilliant contraptions, and they can do just about everything and anything you would ever want them to do. And, well, we'll also talk about space, because I have a pretty small, well, this is the smallest one that they make in the upright. So we'll get into all of that. But for my love of smoke, and ooh, can you see it wafting off, that sexy, seductive, rustic flavor, all that wood smoke? I mean, gosh, imagine if you read a recipe and the first ingredient was the ebullient release of decades of sunlight and joy stored in the delicious wood smoke of a tree, right? Like, okay, I'm in, right? I mean, it's good stuff. That's why I love grilling, is that smoky, rustic, seductive flavors that it imparts to everything. Now, I use wood. Now, I know that a lot of people use charcoal, and even more people use gas grills, and everything we're doing here today you can do on either of those. I just like wood fire purely. Well, I know it well, and well, it adds so much flavor to it. So the other reason why I really love grilling is that it gets you outside. It gets you to rethink your organization, rethink the daily grind of dinner, if that's what it is for you. And it also just asks us to sort of, well, literally remove ourselves from our regular, scheduled programming, and brings us out here into a beautiful world. And those of you who have joined me before know that when I start off, I always like to say something I'm thankful for this week. And, well, that's what I'm thankful for. I live in a wonderful, beautiful place with beautiful people and great friends and a peach tree and a pear tree and chickens that'll probably start howling at some point. But yeah, that's what grilling begs us to do, is to kind of reconsider where we are and to really ordain the dinner process with a little bit more ritual, with a little bit more celebration. And so here we go. Okay, so the dishes that I'm going to be doing today, I'm going to run you through kind of a whole menu of things for, well, the beginning of grilling season up here in Maine, which is sort of the 4th of July. So it's all centered around a steak, and I'll talk about the massive portion size on that in a second. But what I really want to showcase here is the adaptation and the evolution of fire. So as you saw, I started off some wood chunks in this machine, the charcoal chimney, which is a very effective way. It just funnels the airflow through. And, well, like with all forms of cooking, grilling is really about managing heat. And what's different about grilling is that you're dealing with live heat. It's the difference between driving a powerboat and a sailboat. Both will get you there. It's just one is infinitely more variables. And, well, that to me is very it's sexy. So I've got the grill grate, or the air intake on the bottom open about a third of the way. I started off with some wood chunks, and then you saw at the beginning of the program I added some more wood chunks in. So I'm going to use one fire to cook 5 dishes, and I'm just going to dive into some of them. And well, one other aspect of this program that's a little bit different than what we normally do is we've pre-recorded this, given the vagaries of weather and whether or not my 3.5-year-old child will nap at a time when the weather is cooperating. So I'm coming to you recorded. I will be back with you for live Q&A. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm making an Escalivada, which is a Spanish dish of roasted vegetables. Eggplant. So this is kind of like a ratatouille, but, well, just in its parts. So I'm going to take an eggplant, and watch this. I'm going to put it right in the fire. And then I'm going to take a sweet onion and put it right in the fire. And then I'm going to do what most people do, which is to start grilling on the top of it. So the rest of the, well, let me get into the fire here. If you'll notice, I put all of the coals over to one side. The reason for that is that I now have a smoking, a raging hot, a pretty dang hot, a hot, and a medium. And I also have a little slow, seductive, smoldering, sexy, smoky part over here that I can capture with the grill cover. Hey, I mean, when you're cooking a meal with different ingredients on a stovetop, what do? You've got one on medium, one on low, one on high, right? Give yourself that option here. So that's what I do. I call this indirect grilling. Well, many people do. And you can do this with charcoal grills and gas grills too. The way to do it on a gas grill is to turn one side up to high. If you've got a 3 burner, turn the middle one up to medium and the over one here to low or even off. And you'll see what we're going to do is use the cover to capture heat, to create both a direct heat environment but also an ambient environment. So the next thing I'm going to do to finish off the, not finish off the Escalivada, but to continue with that. So I've got a bunch of just beautiful peppers here. Toss those with olive oil. Now, I cook everything with olive oil. Only very rarely do I use a vegetable oil because to me, well, if the oil is going to end up in the final dish, I just make it oil, make it olive oil. So I'm going to put those right over the heat, and what we're doing is we're charring these to blister the skin so that the flesh cooks through, but the skin chars and pulls away from the flesh. And, well, you'll see exactly what that is. And then I'm going to put a whole zucchini over here because, well, I kind of want it to just get rustic and smoky and charred, maybe a little bit black on the outside, and, well, you know, still moist and tender and delicious on the inside. I've also got some spicy peppers here. I'll just throw those on for fun because I found them in the bottom of my fridge. So there you go. That's how formal my menu planning can be. So while those are going, let me discuss with you the other dishes that we're going to do. First off, if you're grilling, people are watching you, right? Because everybody came over, all your friends or all your family, and they're sitting around waiting for you to be done with dinner, right? Because all of a sudden dinner is a show. You got to give them something to eat while you're putting on the show, right? So I've got chicito peppers. This is also a padron pepper is another one you can use. This is a really fun little pepper. It's very mild, but still packs just a little whisper of heat. Every now and then you get one that's just like, and I really like that. But what I do is I've got a grill grate for those. And if ever you're grilling green beans or grilling peppers like this and you got a grill grate, don't feed your fire, feed your family. Just put it in a grill grate. You don't have a grill grate? Hey, do you have a colander? Not a plastic one. Do you have a metal colander? Great, that works too. So I've tossed those with olive oil and salt, and I'm just going to put those in here. And as soon as these are off the grill, I'm just going to put this directly into that same position. Now, once those are grilled, those are just served as an appetizer. You just eat them straight off the stem, dip them into aioli, as we do around here, or just sea salt and a little bit of lemon juice on top, and they're delicious. They're great hot off the grill. They're great 3 hours off the grill at room temperature, and it's just a nice little bite for people to dig into. So as the skins char, you just turn the peppers over. And does that look burned to you? Good. That's the way it's supposed to be. So you'll notice that I'm using very, very high heat, and I'm using direct cooking here, meaning the ingredients are directly over the highest part of the heat because I want them to char and burn. Burnt can signify an error in your cooking. I mean, if you're making a cake, don't burn it. If you're making something on the grill, hey man, burn is a good flavor, especially if it's counterbalanced by other aspects of the dish, like the sweetness of peppers, the sweetness of the onion. Man, it really makes a pretty compelling flavor combination. So, with these, let's see, I've got a little thing over here. So, another thing about grilling, and the only reason why I find that people can get stressed out about grilling is because you've got time-sensitive stuff rolling on a raging live fire, and you've got your kitchen over there. You've got to be self-sustained on a little island right here, right? So really think through the entire process of what you're going to need. Are you going to need a platter to put things on? Are you going to need some tongs? Are you going to need a fork? Are you going to need a spoon? The more time you spend running in and out of doors or telling people to go get stuff for you, the more stressful it gets. So I've got a little platter here. I'm just going to throw those on there. And as these char, let's see, you'll see that I've thrown some lemons on there. I'll talk about those in a second. But, you know, I probably should have started off with just going down through the entire menu. So I'm going to do that right here. Okay. Grilled lemon, lemonade, made with maple syrup and a little bit of mint, smoky, sweet, seductive, all of those wonderful things about grilling in a lemonade. Man, what an awesome way to incorporate the grill into what you're drinking. And, well, you want it virgin? Drink the lemonade. If you don't, throw some delicious vodka in there or rum. Man, great cocktail. Next thing we're doing is those shishito peppers that I was telling you about. Then we've got a lot of vegetables. And, well, to me, though grilling is sort of this primitive, well, very masculine, tending to be, you know, it's burgers and big steaks, really, vegetables are the star of the show. And this book, I'm not trying to give you a hard sell on it, but this is a grilling book, and it's actually really a book about vegetables, as is most of my cuisine. So we have a number of vegetable dishes. This Escalivada one. We've got the shishito peppers. I'm going to do some charred carrots on there as well. So the lemonade, and then the steak. And I'm going to be giving you a technique, a really cool technique on how to cook steak here. That's pretty different than what you are used to. So as soon as those begin to hiss at you, as you can hear them doing maybe over here, take them off. I've got one of these real fancy grills here that you can flip up that side of the grill so you can access your coals underneath. But in addition to the coals, you can also access any food you put down there. So I'm just gonna turn those around. You can see I give my grill a lot of wear and tear. So officially Weber Grills does not recommend, actually I think recommends against using wood in there because it burns so hot and differently, but who am I to play by the rules? So you see that I've got some lemons on there that I threw on there. Those are going to go into the lemonade. Just cut them in half. These are Meyer Lemons, which I particularly love for the sweet-sour balance that they have. That's a little bit different than that of a normal lemon. But limes, regular lemons, oranges, all work beautifully well. Basically, grab the citrus that's on your counter, cut it in half, throw it on the grill. So those can just kind of sit there as you go. Zucchini will sit there as well. And as the peppers get done, I'm going to throw those shisitos right on. And we're doing the exact same thing with the shisitos as we're doing with the bell peppers here, and that is just to blister and char their skins. And as soon as they are cooked, you're not really trying to cook them all the way through. You're not going to remove the skins. You just eat them just as they are. But you see all that smoke? You know what that is? That's flavor. Sorry, I get excited about grilling. I really like it. And, well, yeah. So that's going to be really quick because your guests are starting to get hungry. They antsy for maybe a drink. and a little snack. So, okay, give me 1 minute and I'll be up with that. So let's talk about the steak. This is a method I learned from a chef named Carol Greenwood, who is a magician, an alchemist, an artist, and just a wholly unique person in the world, and a lovely, wonderful person. But this method of cooking steak is so amazing. And it starts with an amazing steak. Now you see that? That's a big steak, folks. That's a big old steak. Now I'm cooking dinner here for 4 people, I mean even 8 people. And what's so great about this is that the flavor on this steak is so intense. It is so brilliant that you really only need 2 to 3 ounces of actual meat per person in order to satiate. Think about it like bacon. I also call it meat bacon. Do you fill up on bacon? No, you have a couple of slices kind of as your garnish to the breakfast meal, right? It's kind of the same way the steak is. So for the steak, I choose a strip steak. And the reason for that is that it's got that great marbling, all the flavor, the tenderness to it, but it's also, unlike the ribeye, it doesn't have those fat seams running through it, because I'm going to be dipping and grilling, dipping and grilling, dipping and grilling for the next half hour on this thing. So because it's so high touch, it's got to have some structural integrity. Thus, strip steak is perfect. You wouldn't want to use much else. Maybe a good chuck roast steak or something else with some sirloin steak with some body to it and heft of flavor. But you really, like a filet mignon, a ribeye, it just isn't going to work. So, there are the chisitos. And that's them. Yep. Just serve them with a couple little bits of lemon on the side there, and there you go. So, all right. So now I've got those peppers going, and now I've got my super hot part of the grill returned back to me for use for the steak. Now the steak is about it's actually about 2.5 to 3 inches thick. I seasoned it heavily with salt and I let it rest for a little while. Then what you're going to do is put it directly over the very hottest part of the flame, and you're going to burn it. It's just going to sit there. And then what you're going to do is, after you've charred it, I've got a dip here that is half soy sauce, half beer, and what I'm going to do is dip, flip, grill. Wait about 30 seconds, pull it off, dip, flip, grill. And what you do in this process is you're reducing constantly all the meat juices, the beer, and the soy sauce into this thick, rich crust. And you'll see what I do is also then cover the grill often to capture that smoke. So you're creating this ambient heat method that slowly roasts the beef as well as chars it. So, another important thing about grilling, when you're thinking about all the stuff you need, don't forget a trash can, right? Because you're going to create some trash. So, peppers are done. Zucchini's going. Katie, if you might pull on in here, can you get a close-up of that onion down there where the juices are beginning to kind of peep out? I've pierced the eggplant just a few times with a knife, just very shallow. And the reason there is just so it doesn't explode, because exploding eggplants suck. They hurt, really. So, yeah, that's getting really nice down there. So the last part of the meal is going to be a charred carrot. Now those have been boiled ahead of time in salted water. Katie, you've got a chair right behind you. Don't fall over that. Salted water with red wine vinegar added to it. So you've got this sweet sour component to it, and I've cooked them until they are soft. So they're easily pierced with a knife. I've left the skins on because, just like with the peppers, those will char and add a great deal of flavor. And yeah, so here we go. So you see I'm getting a good sizzle and crust there. That's what I'm looking for. I'm gonna move steak around just a little bit to get as much of that heat as possible. So Normally, at this point, I would do like a Q&A, but because we're not live, I can't take a couple of questions from you. So, but we are going to be back after this whole demo with that. So what I'm going to do is continue to show you this, and then once we're done with the process of cooking the steak, it's going to need to rest for a while, and I'll go through the process of peeling up the peppers for you and plating everything, and then, well, I'll take a few questions, and then I'll come back and explain the dishes in front of us, and then we'll finish it out with some more Q&A. So, Katie, how are we doing on time there?
About 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes? Hey, that's only 3 minutes. 3 minutes longer than I was hoping to be. So, I get really excited talking about grilling. So, anyway, hey, what's your favorite thing to grill? I mean, are you just a burger person? Nothing wrong with that. I mean, a grilled burger's awesome. But are you a vegetable person? Are you doing like roast portobellas? Do you get really creative and grill a lot of vegetables? Are you doing paellas on the grill? Hey, tell me right in on that side over there. Let me know some of the things you like about grilling, and or maybe tell a story about some really great meal you once had off the grill. Because meals off of the grill tend to be imbued with a greater romance than your average daily fare. And there's an aspect of communion to cooking over fire. It brings people together. It's literally in our DNA that human beings want to gather around the fire. Even before we were human beings, we were doing that. There's something so primal, so fundamental, elemental about it that brings us together. So oftentimes grilled meals have that added sense of romance to it. So, all right. So as that steak is going, now, one thing I'll tell you about steaks is people tend to go for those perfect crosshatch marks. Don't worry about that. Just don't. Worry about cooking the steak right. Worry about having your fire right. Worry about, all of the variables that actually go into the meal being really delicious. Don't worry about trying to get perfect little diamond crosshatches on it. Most of the time with food, I'm a huge advocate of just don't touch it. It's the heat that cooks the food, not you, not your tongs, and definitely not the very masculine sort of instinct to poke things. So just let it sit. Don't worry about the aesthetic of it because it's all going to get under the crust anyway. So I'm going to, because we're in direct sunlight here, I'm getting a little hot. So just squeeze them in. You see how charred and beautiful they are? I mean, it's burned. But the aroma, Katie, you want to chime in? Katie's got her mask on. She's social distancing, but you got any comment on it?
I can't smell much through my mask.
Oh,
It does smell
okay.
smoky delicious.
Okay, good. Good. It's a good hypothesis. So I am going to enjoy this. There's just a mint sprig in there, and serve it with whatever you want. Getting a few drops of rain on me here. Yeah. So, getting back to the steak. So this mixture here, the way that I originally learned this dish was with red wine and soy sauce. But I've chosen, because we're outside grilling, and I live down the street from one of the very best breweries in the world, Maine Beer Company, who are, their logo, their motto is, where is it? I just want to do what's right. And they do. They treat their employees well, they treat their customers well, they treat the earth well. They're a 1% for the planet company. If you're going to be proud of a neighbor, man, this is a company to be proud of having. Plus, they have absolutely delicious beers. And so I thought their IPA, they have a double IPA called Dinner, which is a very famous beer and very hard to get, as a stand-in for the red wine in this. So here we go. Katie, come on over if you would. And I want to take a look first at the onion down here and that eggplant, because you don't want to forget about that. And you see how the outside of that onion is getting very charred, but it's still solid. It's not soft yet all the way through. So that onion's going to hang out down there. But that eggplant, you see that? It's sort of getting, there you go. Look at that. So if you pull that skin back, you've got this incredibly moist, delicious flesh running through it. It's just barely cooked, mostly steamed in its own juices. You can see that it's hot all the way through. So, yep, that's a good one. So, with the fire, as I said, we're going to be charring some carrots. We're going to be using the grill cover to capture some of that heat. And then for dessert, we're going to be grilling some peaches. And this is a passive action because, well, passive action, good job. This is a passive process because what we're going to do is after everything for the savory part is done, you're going to take the peaches, put them right on the grill, cover it up, close off the heat, and just let them sit until you're ready to eat it. So, here we go. We're going to do our dip and grill, but the last thing I wanted to show you is how my heat is. Now that is still really hot. I mean, that's still singeing, searing hot on that piece of steak. So that's going to last a while. I'm going to close the air down just a little bit more, so it's just a whisper. And here we go. Dip, flip, grill. And I'm just going to keep doing that. You know what I'll be doing? I'm not drinking right now, but normally what I'd be doing is drinking the rest of that bottle of red wine or the rest of this delicious double IPA. Yeah, and it's a really fun thing because also all of your guests are going to be like, what are you doing? Because, well, you know, you're trying to grill something. Why are you dipping it in liquid? Well, to create this delicious crust to it. And it's just a different, interesting way to go about cooking meat. And, well, you'll see the results. So you see now also that I've moved the meat just a little bit off the center of that flame there. That's A, to make room for our carrots, but also because I want to now cook the steak over more moderate heat so that we have a slower, more gentler process. So now I'm going to throw the carrots on here. Can anybody tell me what I just did that was so important? Anyone? Yes, you're right. You got it. I put the carrots perpendicular to the grill grates. Okay? Just think about the action. Think about what you're doing all the way through. Well, I'm cooking a carrot, which is a long, slender thing, and I'm cooking it on grill grates, which are long, slender things with holes running between them. If I put them parallel to the grill grates, guess what I'm going to be doing? Feeding my fire, not my family, and spending a lot of time burning all of my knuckle and most of my forearm hair off in an attempt to get them out of the fire. So just put them on perpendicular. Think about the final action of your dish as you are contemplating the first actions. So there we go. Oh, I'm going to throw my zucchini back on here because it's getting soft, but we'll get there. And you know what? Just one more time for good measure. All right. And there comes the use of that grill top. And I'm actually going to open that up just a little bit more. Now, if you need to throw more heat on your fire, if you see it dying down just a little bit, fine, go ahead and do so. You know, I keep a couple of chunks of wood around, small ones that are going to ignite very quickly and burn down to coals quickly. But one or two of these will add 100 degrees to your fire. So that if you need to make amendments as you go, just do it. If you need to turn up your grill on your gas grill, just do it. Fire is a living thing. So give yourself some leeway to manage it. So, as I said, this is a very active process. Dip and grill. But the other thing is that the rest of the meal is pretty much, well, it's done at this point, other than kind of peeling some peppers, which you can have your kids do or someone else. And yeah, it's just kind of standing around having fun now, being outside, hoping the clouds might come and cover up the sun. And yeah, this is what grilling is all about. So I'm going to cut the video soon here, and I'll just finish out the process of this. I'm going to continue to dip and grill, and I'll be back with you when we're about 5 minutes away on this. And what you'll see is, well, I'll be at the bottom of this by that time. So all of this will, almost all of it will have been used. And I'll have a couple of dishes plated up, and we'll talk through the rest of the process. So cheers. Hey, go drink the rest of that beer. Hey everyone, I'm back a week later. Thanks for joining us again. It's a real honor and pleasure to have you all here, and thank you for allowing us to do this sort of split screen way here of presenting the information to you. So yeah, I'm also happy to be sitting inside today because, like the other day when I was out there grilling, it is very hot here in Maine. So we've got about another 8 minutes or so of grilling video out there. So in the meantime, I'm going to take a few questions from you. So thanks for all of you who have joined, and thanks for all your questions. I hope you're enjoying everything so far. So hey, let's just start at the top. Alexander, I just want to say thank you, Chef. We appreciate you and your team. Oh, hey, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's kind of you to say. We put a lot into these events, and it's nice to know that they're appreciated. And please know we appreciate you very much so. Thanks, Blaine. All right, from Brenda C. I've been a personal chef caterer for 12 years, and I'm a really good cook. I bet you are, but to this day, I'm a horrible griller, unless it's on a stove with a grill pan. I just can't ever get it right on my outdoor grill or coal barbecue. Please help with any tips. Wow. Well, there's a lot there, Brenda. But I admire the humility. So good for you, because the very best cooks are those who continue to learn. So that's great. You know what? I think the very best thing to do would be to think about utilizing that indirect heat grilling method, or multiple heat zones. You say you're a great cook, you've got a lot of experience, you know how to manage a stove with lots of different things. That's the key difference with a grill versus a stove, is that you have this active living variable in the fire. So if you put all of your coals over to one side, or you set your gas grill up in the same way, and I can tell you about that, all of a sudden you've sort of created a scenario that you're likely more comfortable with. So that if your chicken breast is getting a little dark over there, fine. You just move it slightly over to the side. So you're giving yourself that control mechanism over the variable. So that's what I would recommend, sort of forthright as the overarching control. There's an exponential number of details past that, but pick simple dishes. Pick things that you know exactly what the outcome looks like, feels like, smells like, should be, so that you can constantly monitor the process, and you have a very clear vision in your head of where you're trying to get to. And in that way, again, you're just setting yourself up for success. And you know this, you're a professional, mise en place, things in place. Get your prep ready, right? Get your head prepped for grilling too. So thank you so much for your question. To the gas grill, how do you set it up for a indirect or moderate zone cooking? So if you've got 3 heat zones, turn one to high, turn one to medium, turn one to low, or keep it off. And by opening and closing that lid, you're doing the same thing by capturing that ambient heat, but you've also got those graded zones of heat. It's a great way to do it. So, hey, Brenda, thanks so much. I appreciate your question. All right, from Julie P. Do you ever oil the beef or other protein before you put it on the hot grill? No, not really. With seafood, sometimes yes. Depends on the seafood. But when it comes to sturdier, denser proteins, beef, pork, chicken, lamb, veal, turkey, whatever it is, there's really very little risk of ripping apart or damaging it. The key is to have the right heat. The key is to also have your grill grate brought up to temperature as well. If you put a piece of cold meat on a cold grill grate over a hot flame, you're not going to get that instant separation. Those proteins are going to stick. So like on the Weber grill that I use, those grill grates are very thin. They don't hold a lot of heat, but it helps to get it hot. And if you watch in the video, you can see there are spots on that grill that are white. There are spots that are gray and there are spots that are black. Those are visual cues as to the heat there. And when you put the protein down to sturdy protein, anything with fat in it, like a good piece of beef, is going to render out that fat. It's going to self-baste and create some of that separation. But really what you're looking for is time. Heat is what really creates that separation. By fully coagulating, searing those proteins, they are no longer sticky, and they naturally separate from that grill, making it thus very easy to flip them off. So for seafood, things that are more delicate, yes, a very light oiling I will do. Be careful with fish like salmon, anything that's really fatty, because that will also render fat and drip down. But the last thing you really want to do on a grill is have something heavily oiled, because the oil will drip down into the flame and will burn and will create a smoke of rather ill-tasting smoke, big cloud of rather ill-tasting smoke. It's also not very good for you, the carcinerated fats. So just enough to give it that slight separation to sort of accelerate that process. Hey, Julie, thanks so much. I appreciate you. Appreciate your questions. All right, Teresa, I always tend to overcook my burgers no matter what I do. What are the best rules to follow to get the perfect medium rare cook? All right, so back to that indirect heat grilling method. If all you've got is hot, then that's the only temperature you can cook at, right? And hot is not great for cooking something all the way through, especially a thick burger. And that's the other key is, first of all, start off with a burger that can actually attain a gradient temperature. If your burger is this thin, a McDonald's thinness burger, you're never going to get it to medium rare because the whole thing is going to cook just quickly. So start off with something thick enough to give yourself the opportunity to cook it to medium rare. But think about if you were to cook something on the stovetop, searing a piece of salmon. Okay, you put it into a hot pan, and then what do? Well, you turn the pan down at some point, right? You're not just going to continue to, beleaguer that piece of salmon with heat, hot, violent heat all the way through and expect it to be moist. No. Set yourself up to have that same success on the grill. Have your super hot zone where you take your well-salted burgers. Always put a little dimple in the middle when they're raw, because any thick burger will puff up in the middle just as it sears on the outside and the juices on the inside begin to sort of create a steam bubble. So a little dimple right in the center will help that. And that also then gives you just a little bit more visual cue as to the temperature and what's happening in that burger. Sear it on that super hot side and then move it over. So you've got a medium, sort of a roasting area where you're still getting all that flavorful smoke and heat, but you're not getting the hot. And that way you're cooking the product more gently, you have more time, more leeway, and that's what I recommend. And always toast your burger buns too. If you got the grill going, toasted burger bun, that slight crunch after you get through the burger. Hot damn. There you go. All right, so one more question, and then we'll go back to the video. So thank you, Teresa. I appreciate your question. From Shruti, please highlight differences between grilling on coals, wood, and gas. Flavor really is what it comes down to for me. Charcoal, wood, whatever kind of charcoal, whatever kind of wood you have, is a far more intricate heat source. That you're just far more is happening through combustion. I think there's over 700 different chemicals that are released when wood is burned. Some of those are hugely aromatic. Some of them are rather, acrid and nasty, and you don't want them. Some of them are very flavorful on the palate. When you burn gas, it is a pure gas that you are burning, and so you're just not getting the liveliness of flavor. And so the flavor you get from grilling over gas is the flavor of the sear. It's just heat applied, but then whatever fats or juices drip down hit whatever heat source there is and smoke. So you're actually kind of smoking your burger with burger fat that drip down and then comes back up. So to me, those are the major differences, is just the complexity and possibility for the application of flavors. But in terms of the function of grilling over gas or grilling over coals, it's the same thing. You're applying heat from below. And as I said in the outset of the video, grilling with gas and grilling with charcoal or wood, they'll both get you there. But grilling with charcoal and wood is like sailing a sailboat, and gas is like driving a powerboat. They'll both get you there, but they're very different experiences. And sailing requires knowledge and sort of paying attention to an infinite number of variables. So charcoal, wood, very much more difficult until you get the hang of it and get comfortable with it, at which point, it becomes an addiction. So, all right. Thanks for your question, Shruti. I appreciate it. So, Patrick, my dear friend and colleague at Rouxbe, who is behind the scenes on this event, if I may request that we head back to the final minutes of the video preparing the steak, and then we'll come back and take some more questions from you. All right. Thank you for that brief pause. So I've got a number of the dishes ready to roll here. You know what? Let's start off with this one over here. I had a few extra peppers, more so than was sort of needed for the melange here of the Escalivada. So I had some anchovies. I love these smoked anchovies. So these are the roasted red peppers. Anchovies over top. You've got some mace, which is an amazing ingredient to pair with seafood, but is really charismatic with this in particular. And then mint over top, because, well, mint is one of those things that in your garden, it actually tells you how to use it in the kitchen, which is the only way to tame your mint is to use it in everything in your kitchen. So throw it in your lemonade, throw it on this. It's a delicious combination of flavors. I first learned this when I was living and working as a fisherman in Morocco. That was a dish I used to eat quite a bit. Anyway, so the steak over here, the steak, as I said, that most of that liquid was going to be sort of reduced into this thick, deep, rich crust on the outside of this. I don't have issue with dipping this back into the original, because the original dish here, I don't think there's any cross contamination. You're not going to make yourself sick. I don't believe. I'm comfortable doing that, but it just helps to soak it up a little bit more juice when you're resting it. So that's been resting about 5 minutes or so, and I'll just let that sit. Now, when I pulled that off the grill, and I had to put a few more chunks of wood on the grill, when I pulled that off the grill, I closed tight the bottom grate here to choke off the fire, and I also choked off the escape or valve up at the top, and I just put peaches down. These are slightly unripe peaches cut in half. You can struggle to take the pit out if you need to. If they're clingstone, if they're freestone, just pull it out. But you know what? Those are going to get smoky and lovely, and just let them sit. That grill is still probably 250, 300 degrees in there. Yeah, and it's pretty hot. So those will cook. I mean, you're talking about 45 minutes to an hour before we get to that as part of dessert here. So our steak is resting. I peeled off all the skin on the peppers. That zucchini became perfectly oozy, nice, wonderful inside. You've got the eggplant. I just kind of peeled that off into strips. The onion, pulled that out and just scrape off anything that's burned. That's just the outside part, and that's why I left the skin on. But you know what? Some of that outside part is great to have in there anyway. So I'm gonna toss those over there. And with this, oh my gosh, the smell on this is amazing. And you have these sort of different layers of cooked, from the charred outside, and slightly granular bits on the outside to just the sort of steamed, savory sweet on the inside. And just strew those over. Man, this would be another really great dish to put some mint on, I tell you. But instead, what I'm going to do is put some blue cheese. And this is just a gorgonzola type blue. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention at the outset that all of these recipes are in the event document down just below the screening window there. So, please print those out or open that up and follow along with me as I go. I've made some variations here just due to what's in my fridge, etc., and what's in season behind me in the farm here. But by and large, these are good. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to keep doing that because it's really good. And I've got a sherry vinaigrette. This is sherry vinegar, olive oil, and a couple of just sliced cloves of garlic. And not to incorporate them into the dressing, but just to flavor, and just they sit there for a little while. And easy enough to make. Just drizzle that over top. Wow. That is an absolutely delicious dish. So, where are we now? Charred carrots. You see these here? Katie, if you could walk in a little bit more. So that's exactly what you're looking for, is that charred skin on the outside. That's the skin of the carrot that chars. So don't peel them, is the key to this, because that's really what absorbs all that flavor. And I've just got some garnishes here. I'm just going to make I don't think this is part of the recipe I gave you, but I've got some cilantro in the garden and some mint as well. Man, that is a nice combination of flavors right there. You got your shishito peppers, which, because, well, we don't have any guests, no one's been eating. But I assure you that had you had guests and you were doing this, someone would have been. So, now for the steak. Y'all ready for this? All right. So as I was saying earlier, it's a giant hunk of meat, but this hunk of meat will satisfy 8 people. And the key to that is slicing it thin. This is not a steakhouse steak where you're just gorging in on it. This is a work of art. It is a work of a lot of labor that you've put into a grill. So treat it as such. Enjoy it. I mean, that's your sustenance right there, right? And you got this delicious dessert and you're filling up on delicious beer too. So let that be the bulk of your meal, and then garnish it with just very thin slices. And if you're playing your heat right and you're managing it, by the time you are done with the baste here, your meat is going to be about a perfect medium rare, depending on the thickness or the density of the cut there. And if you're serving a bunch of people, that's how I like to do it. So you're going to have a couple of slices in the middle that are going to be more on the medium rare side, and a couple of, as you get towards the outside, that are going to be a little bit more well done. But you see, because I cooked that so slowly on the grill, it's got that roast beef texture to it. And because I cut it so thin, you get such a packed load of flavor per bite that it is so amazingly good. It's chewy, salty, sweet, the bitterness of the beer. It's certainly smoky, but because of the slowness, because of the deliberateness of the cooking process in this, it just comes into balance so well that none of those aspects stand out more so than the other. I mean, despite the fact that I crusted this in salt and then spent 45 minutes dipping it in soy sauce, it doesn't come off as salty. It doesn't come off as overly smoky. This is just the absolute best way, in my opinion, to cook meat. Because, well, honestly, we shouldn't be eating a whole lot of meat. It's a delicious, wonderful, enjoyable part of our diet, and certainly part of grilling celebrations like this, right? So, yeah, cook it. Find really great grass-fed beef from a local farm producer that you know and trust and really want to support. Buy a giant chunk of it. Spend some money on it, but then feed a whole lot of people with it. In the end, this actually ends up being a very cost-effective meal, because you're filling people up on vegetables. So, You see, I just sliced that into 50 slices there. That's the whole point. So I've just got a platter over here. And you see, because it cooked slow and I let it rest just about 5 minutes or so, look how much moisture was exuded. I mean, you saw that entire process of a piece of meat that was cooked, well, basted in liquid and then cut before your eyes, and that's all that was exuded. So you're getting your money's worth out of that. So I've just got some fresh tomatoes because they're in the garden. A little bit more of them are still in the garden, and that's that same sherry vinegar. And hey, crusty bread, beautiful steak, just rip it with your hands, big flavorful vegetables, a little bit of spiced pepper over here in the corner, those just wonderful sweet sour carrots with that smoky rustic appeal, the slight bite and texture of the shallot, cilantro over top. This dish I just threw in there. I love this one. I love this one, especially over bread, the Chisitos. This is my ultimate grilling meal. All right, I'm really looking forward to talking to you. So gather your questions, write them on in, share your reminiscences. Here we go. I'll see you in the kitchen. Cool. All right. So I hope you all enjoyed that and got some inspiration to put a lot of vegetables on your grill, but also, to share with me my love for that steak, that meat bacon, as I called it. It truly, absolutely is just the most wonderful thing. That if you are going to splurge, that's just the way to do it. And honestly, because it takes so long to cook, dip it, grill it, flip it, it makes for really great conversation. You've got something to do, and you're putting on a show, and at the end of it, it's all worth it. So anyway, thanks for watching that. I'm eager to take a few more questions from you. So from Shruti, how do you grill on wood planks? All right. So wood planks, typically cedar planks, and this is a methodology of cooking that is very common in the Pacific Northwest that I believe that we have adopted from indigenous peoples' cuisines there. But these cedar planks are put on a heat source, oftentimes just in an oven even, or on top of the grill, and the heat of the oven or the grill sort of blooms the oils and the aromas in the cedar and cooks, sort of infuses that into the food. Typically salmon is often cooked on cedar plank. One of the reasons for cooking on a cedar plank instead of just cooking on a grill is that, well, if you're cooking a whole side of salmon, you've got it basically on a flavorful tray, so you can very easily move the whole piece of salmon that otherwise would be very hard to move. When it comes to grilling individual pieces, quite honestly, I think I'd rather just put it on the grill, directly on the grill to get that wood flavor out of the charcoal or wood if you're using, instead of putting it on the cedar plank. If you're using a gas grill, that's a really wonderful way to add that flavor and get that in there. You do have to use a cover, though, often with cedar plank grilling, because that cedar plank is, well, it's a physical barrier between the heat from below and the food. So that means you're cooking the food slowly with a really gentle heat. But otherwise, the heat's just kind of going up and around it, right? So putting that top on the grill captures that and really maximizes the effectiveness and effect of the cedar plank. So there you go. All right, from Geraldine. I love grilled veggies, especially zucchini and corn. I want a grilled pineapple. Any suggestions? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, grilled zucchini, man. It is awesome. I'm glad you do that. And the old joke up here in Maine is the only time you lock your doors in Maine is during zucchini season. And I made the mistake. I've got three different varieties of zucchini I planted, and 2 of them are new to me this year. So I've got 9 zucchini plants. So if you live anywhere near me, watch out. Keep your windows rolled up because you're gonna find some zucchini dropped off to you surreptitiously. But Geraldine, to your question about pineapple. So pineapple is absolutely fabulous, roasted, sautéed, in butter, grilled, but it needs fat. Otherwise, it just dries out and can get leathery. It just dehydrates the outside. Well, you want to skin it first of all. You want to just cut it as you would for anything else, any other use. But those cut areas can just get very dry and leathery. Basting it with some fat helps to retain that moisture and kind of cook down the cell walls that are on the outside there. And so what that allows for is it just to soften into itself and to steam rather than just to dry out. Oftentimes pineapple is really good used as a base for a grill. So just as I was describing with the cedar plank, grill a big pork chop as you would right on the grill, but then finish it by roasting it slowly. Put a big piece of, a big slice of pineapple down and put the pork chop right on top of that. And all those fats and juices will baste into that and they'll get friendly together and all that. So the other thing about grilling pineapple is really live fire smoke, wood smoke or charcoal is best for that. Otherwise, I would just recommend, I don't really like pineapple on the gas grill because it just draws out that bitterness, that tannicness in it, that sort of back of the palate bite. If you're going to cook it over gas grill, I would just recommend cooking it over the stove in some butter, maybe a little bit of brown sugar in there. I think that's going to be a better outcome. But it also does well in kebabs because it cooks relatively quickly and because it has such a punctuating flavor that it works well with other vegetables. So try it with zucchini and just think about the sort of soft, mellow flavor of zucchini and that soft texture, and then pair that with that acidic, tannic bite of pineapple. Just in your head, you probably imagine that would be pretty good. So there you go. Hey, thanks so much, Geraldine. I appreciate you. All right, from Catherine Z. As a novice to grilling, are there foods that don't fare so well on the grill, whether it's because of their flavor, their moisture, or other qualities? Thanks for a great lesson. Well, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate your kind words. Hey, and welcome to the grilling family. We're happy to have you. Thrilled, even. Yes, there are foods that do not belong, that are not flattered well by a grill. First and foremost, let's just say foods that physically don't work well on a grill. On a grill, you have to, it's a high touch methodology of cooking. So something like a very delicate flounder fillet or sole, it's just not going to work. You're going to feed your fire, not your family. Is the bottom line. You can be very careful. Yes, it's possible. It's just not recommended, especially not if you're trying to cook for 4 or more people. That's a lot of grill space you've got to have. It's a lot. It's just, you got a lot of room for error there. So things with a very delicate structural component are not very good. Some whitefish seafoods, some other things like crab, tend not to do very well on the grill. Smoke can make some seafoods taste rather tinny, sort of metallic in the back of the palate. They just don't work well with smoke. So avoid some of those, but pretty much everything else goes well on the grill or goes well with it after the fact. Just a salad of shaved shallots and fresh herbs, whatever it is. When you're talking about marinades for the grill, you really can't go wrong. So smoke is a rather universal flavor. Just think it was the only way we had to cook was over open fire for a long time, and foods go well with it. The other thing that I would say is in foods in particular that do very well, hard herbs, thyme, rosemary, and something that people often don't consider when grilling is acid. That foods on the grill tend to be rich. Think big steaks, pork chops, marinated chicken, etc. Acid really punctuates smoke flavor. charred flavor, that bitterness that I was talking about when I was like, hey, did I burn the pepper? Good. That bitterness that comes from burned or charred is very well flattered and balanced by the sweet sourness of acid, say, like with a lemon. So when you're sort of thinking through your dishes, always just think to have a little bit of acid on the side, something just to punctuate there. And yeah, so hey, I hope you join us again for another of these events. And please, Catherine, let me know how it goes. So again, welcome to the grilling family. Cool. All right, Caleb. I often overcook chicken breasts on the grill, partly out of caution to avoid undercooked chicken. Good. What is the best way to determine doneness when grilling chicken breasts without overcooking? There's two ways to do it. One is instinct, meaning, hey, Caleb, go grill 10,000 chicken breasts like your average line cook does maybe over the course of 3 months. Then you get really good at it. The other way is really to use a temperature probe, a thermometer. Yes, when you stick a thermometer into a chicken breast, yes, you are puncturing that. You are creating a hole through which juices and moisture can escape. Yes, you're right. But I would rather trade that for a overcooked breast. So because that probe is in there, you're going to be able to get it right. So don't forget about carryover cooking. So you want to cook to 165 on chicken. Carryover cooking means that, well, here's your chicken breast, right? And you've gotten the outside of it pretty darn hot through the grill, and you're trying to get that center to 165. Well, that means up here on the surface it's going to be 180, 190, or even above. And the density of that is going to continue to push heat inside. So if you pull the chicken breast off the grill at 155 degrees center temperature, if it's a big thick chicken breast where it's actually retaining heat, it will get up to 165. So don't wait until you read 165 to take it from the heat. That's important to do. Yes, it must get to 165 eventually, and if need be, you can always put it back. So that's the way to do it. And while you're reading the temperature probe, touch it, feel it, listen to it, look at it, smell it. All of those factors, that's what builds the instinct in really good line cooks. You just know. So that you begin to develop your skill set in other ways to begin to take some of the place of that temperature probe. So use the temperature probe really as a training tool for you. But also, Caleb, go back to that indirect heat method. If all you've got is hot and you're cooking over a 500, 450 degree flame or higher, well, you're pushing so much heat into that chicken breast that the time it takes to go from 150 to 170 is very low. I mean, it's a very short amount of time. So if you want a good sear, get a good sear, but then move it over here. Take a little time. Yes, it's going to take longer, but your result's going to be better, and you're giving yourself a larger window to get it right. Hey, Caleb, thanks so much for your question. I appreciate you. Appreciate you joining. Take care. All right, again from Shruti, how to check the temperature of meat while you're cooking. Do you use thermometer or thermometer gauge on the grill, or do you eyeball it? All right, so I kind of answered that. Well, I mostly did. So I no longer use a temperature probe or thermometer of any sort, whether it's a laser pointer or an inserted one. I've cooked so many pieces of meat and chicken and fish in my life and my career that, well, I've just developed that skill set. And as I was saying to Caleb's answer, there are subtle shifts in sound. There are subtle shifts in the sticking, how it sticks to the grill. There are subtle shifts in the smell that you begin to pick up on just after thousands of pieces of it. But until you reach that level, or you have the opportunity to be working in an establishment that has such high volume where you can really train on those instinctual skills, yeah, temperature probe, man. That's just the way to do it. You got to guarantee safety of it, but it's also the best guarantee you have to make sure you're getting quality and a great experience. So, hey, Shruti, thanks for your questions. Appreciate you. All right, from Geraldine again. Any non-alcoholic suggestions to substitute for the beer or wine in the steak? Absolutely. some fruit juice, something not pineapple juice, not papaya juice, but all other juices would probably work pretty well. And I said not papaya and pineapple because those two have high levels of a chemical called papain in it, which is the chemical of meat tenderizer. Just if you want to use meat tenderizer, use it, but I don't recommend it. But pineapple juice and papaya juice, which are pretty obscure, will lead to that same result of mushy meat. I would suggest apple cider. It's got body. It's got a good sweet to acid ratio. Yes, there's a lot of good acid in there that will really punctuate and draw out a lot of good flavors in the meat, as well as the sugars in it will reduce and it will help to form a really great crust. So I've never actually thought of doing this before, and that is a really very good question, and I think an answer that I've inspired myself to go out and try. So next time I do that, I'm going to use apple cider. Cool. But orange juice would work well. I would stick away from thinner juices that are mostly just sugar, like a cranberry juice. I don't think would work really well. But pomegranate would work well, sort of the red wine of the fruit juice world. So, hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it, Geraldine. All right. Hey, Brian. Hey, bud. North Shore Boston here. Right on. What are you doing for the 4th for food? We're getting haddock day boat in Gloucester to help out our fishermen. Keep up the good work. Awesome, Brian. Thank you for supporting your local fishermen. They are, well, hey, the 4th of July, we're celebrating the birth of this nation. And in fact, this nation was birthed upon the backs of men and women who fished cod. It was that industry upon which we took our first steps towards economic and political freedoms in this nation. I wrote about that in my book, American Seafood, and my love letter to the American industry there. So thank you for supporting that. It's an important thing to be thinking about on the 4th of July, and especially coming out of Gloucester, New Bedford, right there. That's where it all began. So very cool. Me? We're doing lobster. So we're up on the delicious Ragged Coast of Maine. Lobster is starting to come in full season right now, and because of the current circumstances with COVID and tourism and everything else, the closing of restaurants around the world, lobster market is very depressed, and prices are very low. Lobstermen are having a tough time, and well, hey, those are my neighbors, and I'm pleased and proud to support them. I can also just walk 30 yards that way and get lobsters. We also trade for lobsters. We put chicken eggs out on our front lawn, and lobsters appear in their place. Life is good. Life is good here. So that's what I'll be doing, and I'll blanch them. I'll get a pot of boiling water and drop the lobsters head first in live. Blanch them for just about 1 minute, and then I'll take them out. That kills them instantly and sets the meat, separates it a little bit from the shell, and put them on a cutting board. Slice them right in half lengthwise. I'll take out the stomach sac, which is the only part of the lobster that really needs to be removed. Brush them with a little bit of oil and put them cut side down right over the very hottest part of a wood fire. Wait about 3 to 4 minutes or so, and then flip them over, and I'll put in a big pat of tarragon butter and let that melt in there. And yeah, that with some first of the season potatoes that I'm digging up today, some garlic scapes that I cut, will be on the grill as well. Let's see what else we're doing. We got some great corn coming in from the local farm, and strawberries that are just blow my mind good. So that's what we're doing. Hey, I hope you have a very, very awesome 4th and enjoy the haddock. Haddock is one of the white fish, though, by the way, that does very well with smoke. And though it is very delicate and hard to work with on the grill, the smoke flavor with haddock is perfect. So, hey, Brian, happy holiday, buddy. All right, from Sunman. What are your favorite vegetables to grill? Awesome. Things with sugar in them. So, sweet peppers, parsnips, carrots. Just earlier today, I was grilling some okra, which is one of my very favorites. Broccoli is another one of my very favorites to grill. All those little florets, all those little tiny flower buds on top, pre-blanched in some salted water beforehand. Throw them on the grill with some oil, and wow, they get so charred and crispy and beautiful. And you'd be surprised at actually how sweet broccoli is when you counterbalance it with that charred taste.
Butternut squash, autumn squashes, I love. Slice them very thin and just sear them. But probably my very favorite thing on the grill would be a red onion. Red onions are a magical ingredient to me. And when seared, charred, singed, whether it's in a cast iron pan, dry cast iron pan, no oil, whether they're broiled or whether they're thrown on the grill, there are few foods that transform so elegantly, so beautifully, that become so much more than they were. Not just, oh, it's now a cooked tomato. It's, or, okay, that zucchini is now tastes like it's been grilled. A red onion truly transcends its former being to become something so wondrous and amazing. So that'd be my favorite. Thanks, Simon. Appreciate you. Appreciate your comments. Question. All right, from Hilda. Greetings. Hi. At home, we built a simple Filipino-style barbecue. We start with a couple of briquettes sprinkled with cooking oil, then add twigs of apple, cherry, maple, whitefish, salmon on foil. Have I ever tried one of these barbecues yourself? You know what? I had read your question a little bit earlier while we were watching the video, and I looked up the Filipino-style barbecue. And yeah, so it's a long, wide, shallow barbecue. You see this common caterers often use these. So you build up a large fire and then spread just the coals out, so you're really cooking over the embers. And these grills tend to use very high heat. So things like kebabs are very quick cook fish. So the style of grill that you're talking about, this Filipino style, is a style that's replicated everywhere. And in fact, the market stalls in Morocco along the coast in Rouxbe, where I worked as a fisherman, that's what they had, these sort of troughs of charcoal that were just awesome. And they're so hot and they crisp the fatty fish and skin, the sardines we were catching so well. So yeah, it sounds absolutely awesome. The whitefish in the foil sounds great, but salmon, I would say give the salmon a try right on the grill grate, and then put it over to the foil, because I think what are they talking about? The fats, as they melt out, will hit that charcoal, and it does add a really wonderful flavor to salmon. But it's probably too thick of a piece to cook all the way through on that direct high heat. So, hey, thanks, Hilda. I appreciate it. Appreciate you sharing that with us. All right, how do you know what to grill on high versus medium versus low, and for how long? So, picture the final dish in your head. What do you want it to be? Do you want it to be is it a chicken breast where you want the skin to be crisp? Is it a piece of salmon fillet with the skin on that you want that crisp skin to it? Think about the nature of the ingredient itself. So is it fatty? Is it very lean? That's going to very much affect the temperature and the heat levels. So if you're talking about a piece of fish like haddock, you're talking about a very lean piece of fish. It's going to have like a fat percentage about 3 to 5%, as opposed to a salmon, which is, well, upwards of 20 even. Very different in terms of their overall sort of leeway that they give the cook, because fat helps to retain moisture. It helps to retain that moist mouth feel, to give us, to allow it to cook all the way through, but still feel really fatty and rich on the palate. So with haddock, you're not really trying to sear it, deep, dark, rich sear and caramelization. No, so that I put on medium heat and cook very quickly. They tend to be thin fillets. Salmon, I'd sear it on the high heat to get that burned flavor to it, and then I'd move it all the way over to the slow part and just let it sit there while I cooked other things. When it comes to vegetables, is the vegetable dense, fibrous? Think carrot, think broccoli stem, or is it moist and soft throughout? Think zucchini, tomato, pepper. Zucchini, tomatoes, peppers should be, to me, it depends on, again, sort of where you're going with it. They have a lot of moisture in them, so it can take a while for them to really sear and char on the outside. And in the video you saw, I just grilled a whole zucchini. I let really moist vegetables just kind of steam in their own juices inside of their intact shell. That's a great way to do that. So, but things like fibrous vegetables, like broccoli, carrots, potatoes, you've got to you got to blanch those first in water to soften that lineous tissue, those lineous fibers, cellulose fibers, before you can grill it to any really appetizing effect. And when it comes to meat, I think it really just depends on what you're trying to do, the thickness of it. If you're going for that golden brown, deep, dark, rich sear, as I said, you want to do high heat and then medium heat likely because of the density of the meat can handle that. But if you're using a marinade, what you're introducing is moisture. So if you're trying to get that rich sear, you first have to boil off all of the water in the marinade before you get that sear. So in that case, I would do medium heat for a longer period of time. Hey, Shruti, thanks so much. You got great questions today. I appreciate you joining. So, all right, from Sharon, I grill whole onions and potatoes, mushrooms, tofu, and salmon. Awesome. You have the same barbecue Weber grill. I love it. Awesome, Sharon. Well, thanks. That sounds like a really good meal. So do you do the whole onions in the embers, as I was doing, or do you do them up top? So please write in and let me know. But if you haven't tried cooking a whole onion with the skin on right in the embers, it's awesome. Potatoes too. That's one of the only ways you can really roast it. You're basically ember baking a potato. So delicious. Hey, awesome, Sharon. Appreciate you. All right. All right, Trudy, nice comment. Thank you. Grilled corn, veg, pineapple, and wonderful grilled kebabs. Yeah, thanks, bud. Appreciate it. All right, what are my thoughts on grilling directly on the grates versus aluminum foil grilling pans, etc.? I don't use them. The only thing I will use other than the grill grate would be a grill pan, like the one that I grilled the shishito peppers in. And I only use that if, well, the pieces of what I'm grilling are so small that, if there's 300 grilled green beans on a grill, it's 300 individual motions you got to make with your tongs. No way, man. Just throw them in a basket, grill the whole basket. Otherwise, grilling in foil, grilling in a pan, you might as well be cooking on the stovetop, as far as I'm concerned. In terms, you're just not getting the flavor out of the grill. So, cool. All right, Sharon. I noticed that Weber is making stainless steel flat bottom grill baskets. Would those cook the peppers the same as the open mesh basket? Flat bottom grill baskets. Yeah, they would, but the mesh basket has the advantage that it lets the heat directly through it, so that it's the heat of the fire that's cooking your peppers rather than the heat of the fire warming the stainless steel, which then cooks the peppers by contact rather than by ambient heat. So, yeah, I'm sure it's a perfectly fine thing. I've used sizzle plates on grills before to cook things like soft shell crabs that I wanted a little bit of smoke on. So there's some precedent for that. I've enjoyed it before, but really those open mesh ones I think are best because they most fully allow the grilling experience to end up in the flavor of your food. All right, from Steve. Do you use a rotisserie on your Weber? Best things to cook with it. I've actually never used a rotisserie. And part of that is because, well, I'm a fish guy. I'm a damn good meat cook too, but in terms of just my restaurants and the cuisine, what we eat at home here, we eat seafood 12 times a week. We eat meat just a couple of times a month. And, I've never really invested in a rotisserie, but I will say rotisserie chicken, rotisserie pork with some pineapple just under it so that all the fats drip on the pineapple. So there you go, Geraldine, the pineapple question. I actually really don't know very much about rotisseries, but I do know that, well, whatever you're rotisserie, it's going through constant shifts of, sort of stress due to gravity. So if you've got a whole salmon, for instance, that's rotating around, well, as it cooks, every time whatever goes down, obviously, is being pulled by gravity more so than what's going up and fighting gravity by the mechanics of it. So what I've seen happen there is that the bellies just fall off. And as fish cooks, well, it's so flaky that the weight of the flesh itself will just pull it off of the rotisserie if you're not careful. Yes, there are baskets that you can use for fish, and if, I can't imagine that being anything less than wonderful. But other than that, I don't have a whole lot of detail for you, Steve. Sorry. But thanks for your question so much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you sticking around. What kind of wood chunks did you put in the Weber? So I unfortunately had to take down a peach tree earlier this year that just did not make it through the winter. So digging out the stump on that, I had a whole bunch of peach chunks. And I think that peaches are the most perfect food in the world. Nothing rivals a perfectly ripe peach. And I think when it comes to cooking woods, the wood of peach tree equals the fruit in terms of just its elegance and svelte, just sexiness, really. So I've got some chunks of that, and that's wet wood still. So it takes a little while longer to burn, but it's got a little bit more smoke to it. But really, I've got a couple of cords of wood that I chopped down here in my wood lot, and we're talking anything but resinous woods. I've got mostly oak and ash that I use, but a lot of fruit wood in there as well. I've got a lot of old pear trees that I trim and get some really big old limbs off of, and I'm rehabilitating a couple of apple trees on the back end of the property too. So there's no shortage of fruit wood around here. I'm very lucky for that. So hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right, about how long in total does it take to cook that piece of steak with a dip in liquid? So Brendan, well, if you're talking about a 3-inch piece of strip steak, it takes about 45 minutes to do it right when your heat is at that really moderate, very smoky level. And that's okay. It is a labor of love, but the love rewards you in the end, Brendan. Let me tell you, that steak is so good. But do plan on giving it the time so that, because the last thing you want to do is put all the effort into it and then have hungry people staring you down and you get antsy and pull it off the grill or cook it at too high of a temperature just to get it done. It just kind of ruins the whole thing. No, it doesn't ruin it. It'll still be delicious, but yeah, the beauty in it is in that slow roasting, absorbing all that smoke, really deep, dark, rich caramelization. So for 3 inches, about 45 minutes. So, hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it if you do make it. So, all right, from BKJ. Hey, buddy. Thanks. Welcome back. Nice to see you again. Appreciate you being here last week. Hey, Barton, thanks for advancing your answer. I noticed that you are touching on gas and propane grills. Do you have a segment in the future whereby you speak on pellet grills? You know what? I've never actually used a pellet grill. But I imagine that it's kind of a hybrid in terms of gas and charcoal in that it has the sort of ease, convenience, and the predictability of gas, but it also has the all the flavor aspects of live fire of charcoal or wood in terms of just those more complex flavors that you're going to get out of it. So no, I've never used one, but hey, I'd love to hear any comments you have on them. I'll certainly look into them. Frankly, my dad used a Weber grill, 18-inch Weber grill, ever since I was a little boy, and I've just literally never cooked on anything else. In my restaurants, we had big Aztec wood grills, but other than that, so anyway, hey, thanks for the comment though. I'm going to look into that and learn something. I appreciate inspiring me. All right, from someone, how do you grill a red onion? Grilled red onions, you don't really want to roast whole. They end up a rather unappetizing color, just sort of a brown purple. It's not very attractive. Plus, really, what you want to get on a red onion, it's delicious when it's seared, where it's charred, singed, but still not yet fully cooked all the way through. You don't want to wilt a red onion so much as you just want to sear the outside of it. So whether you cut it into rings or steaks and just put them on the grill that way, or wedges, leave the stem end on intact and just cut them into wedges. So you have these beautiful wedges that cook, but that you can also maneuver easily because they're held together by that stem end. That's how I'd recommend doing it. A very light brushing of oil. You don't want them dripping at all. You don't need to season them with salt. They have so much sugar that the sugar kind of stands in for the salt. Plus, salt will immediately draw out moisture in the red onion. And what you're trying to do, again, is get that singe or sear on it. And by drawing out that moisture, you're just slowing that process down. So pretty much dry or just a very light brushing of oil right over high heat and for not very long. So cool. All right. Abigail, the anchovies used, were they canned or fresh? The anchovies that I used, and if you can see behind me, that's my wall of anchovies. And those of you who join me often know that I often reach for a can of anchovies. And those of you who join often might think that, oh, those piles look the same every week. Yes, because we eat so much of them that we're constantly re-upping the inventory. But what I was using there, let's see, it's a really, really fine product. It's the smoked anchovy from Roland brand that I've just absolutely fallen in love with. Available on Amazon, available in specialty stores as well. So these smoked ones are really very high quality, but they're not super expensive. You can spend $30 on a tin of anchovies that's only this big. You can spend $1.69 on yeah, how many kinds of anchovies do I have? Yeah, I've got some Tento brand ones. I've got King Oscar brand ones. I've got Delalo in the glass jar. And then I've got some other Roland ones in a larger glass jar. So all of these to me have slightly different uses, but they all stand in the same for whatever you're doing. But if you're putting a piece of anchovy on top really as a very flavor-forward garnish, buy a really great quality one like this. This probably, I think this costs about $4 a tin. You get 12 fillets in it, but wow, do you get $40 worth of flavor out of it. So that's what I recommend. Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it. Anybody who's a fan of anchovies, we're friends. All right. After you've salted your steak, do you wipe it off before you put it on the grill or put it on as is? Great question. I just put it on as is. So there's, thinking around steaks is you want to get that char, that sear immediately to seal in the juices. There's a bit of a misnomer. And that by salting it, what you're doing is drawing out water from the steak as the salt then penetrates into it. And so that sort of sheen of moisture on the outside, as soon as you put it on the grill, you have to steam off that moisture in order to really sear the steak. But in this case, I'm just going to go dip it into, dunk it into moisture. So, and because the thickness of it, no, I don't wipe it off, and I wouldn't ever really wipe it off. I can't see a reason why I would. I would maybe delay seasoning a very thin piece of meat so that I wouldn't have to wipe it off. But the structure of the meat is so dense that it can handle that little bit of moisture on the outside. And but great question. Great question. All right, from Julie P. What would you do a dip and flip method for grilled boneless leg of lamb cut into steaks? If so, would you alter the dipping sauce? Wow, I never thought about that one either. Good Lord, Julie P. What a great idea. Absolutely, I would do a dip and grill. You'd want to do a very thick cut. Lamb, just because the leg has so many intricate parts and so many different muscles running in different ways, all of the dipping and flipping and grilling, all the back and forth, you're likely to just kind of rip it all apart. That connective tissue would just come undone and you'd end up with small pieces. So a thick slice of the bottom round, or especially the top round, those little sort of loaves of bread of meat. They're usually about 2 pounds each, 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds each. Little fat cap on top of them. It's this perfect cut that comes right outside of right from inside the lamb leg. That would be perfect for this. The thing about lamb is that it's obviously going to be far leaner than beef is going to be. So I would recommend a lot less sear and char at the outset and more medium heat throughout. And in terms of what I would alter the dipping sauce to be, red wine would probably be my choice for that. So soy sauce and red wine, which is my original recipe on that, would be very good. I might add some booze in there, some ouzo, some pernod, some anisette, or herb sant, something with that high level of anise flavor to it. That finocchio flavor would be awesome with it, and really help to punctuate that. So, hey, what a great idea. Awesome. Oh, and lemon juice. Throw some lemon juice in there, because that'll help keep the lamminess of it from getting lost in the crust. Cool. Great idea, Julie. All right, from BK again. Thanks again. Being from Seafood Capital, do you ever brine shellfish, specifically lobster, crab, and shrimp? If so, what ingredients you do and how long? Interesting question. So lobster and crab, no, I don't ever brine. There's nothing, to me, at least so far as I have thought and imagined, there's not much of a use or purpose to brining those, or really opportunity to. You brine raw product. Otherwise you're just marinating a cooked product. And lobster and crab meat, you can't really remove from the shell raw. There's some high pressure process now that allow us to extract, but the majority of the time you're talking about a whole animal, or you're talking about cooked extracted meat. So no, I wouldn't brine lobster or crab. Also because the purpose of brine is twofold. Either to cure a little bit, to desiccate in order to smoke, to add flavor, which I don't do with lobster or crab, or it is to help it retain moisture during a cooking process. And again, you're talking about a cooked product to begin with most of the time. And brining a whole animal in its shell, you're not going to accomplish anything. Basically, all you're doing is putting it back into seawater in which it spent its whole life. So you're not accomplishing anything there. Shrimp, do I brine? Absolutely. Not all the time. If I'm going to grill shrimp, brining shrimp makes them really snappy in texture when they're quick cooked over high heat. Do you want that? Well, sometimes, yeah. I mean, especially if you're going to pull them off the grill and serve them as a deeply charred shrimp that's then tossed with a marinade of finely diced shallots, a little bit of garlic powder, olive oil, lemon juice, and chopped fresh cilantro and mint. Like, woo! Yeah, cool. That's a good use for a brine shrimp. But I only brine shrimp, really raw shrimp, when I'm going to smoke them. And what that does is I use a mixture of salt, 3 parts, kosher salt, 3 parts, 1 part brown sugar, and a pretty strong brine. And I only brine them for max 20 minutes, and then let them dry, just uncovered in the refrigerator or walk-in for at least an hour or 2 for that the surface to dry out, so you get the full effect of it. But you can also throw in there any spiced ingredients. Onion powder is really good. Fennel seed, coriander seed is really good in terms of incorporating into the brine. So, hey, BK, man. You've got some good ideas about food, man. We should cook together. That'd be fun. All right. Hey, chef, wondering about grilling using Himalayan salt grilling stone. What are the advantages of using salt stone method, and what would be good proteins to use with this method? Thanks for all you do. Brett. Well, hey, Brett. Appreciate you, buddy, and thanks for the question. So grilling with the salt stone, again, I don't have a whole lot of experience with this. This is not something that has really entered the lexicon of my cuisine. But from what I understand of it, the salt block has all of the humectant properties of powdered salt, meaning it draws moisture to it, but it also strengthens cell walls, thus allowing more moisture to stay in the cell wall of the protein that you are cooking. But much like grilling on a cedar plank or grilling on a stainless steel pan, the salt block is going to block the heat from the grill. And so it's going to come up. Yes, it's going to heat the block, but most of the heat's going to, and that flavor is going to go up and around. So what you're doing is basically just heating up the block so that you can cook on the block And what's cooking is the surface contact. That's where your heat transfer is. Are you really getting the full flavor of the grill? Sure, some of it, especially if you close the top of it to capture that heat. But I think salt, from what I understand, cooking a salt block in an oven is a really great thing in terms of helping retain moisture, especially with fish is great. Or spatchcocked chicken is really great on a salt block. But in terms of the grill, I wouldn't say I overtly recommend it. I don't recommend against it, but I can't really conceive of what the real value in doing that would be. But if you've got experience with it, I'd love to hear from you. And please keep joining these events we got every week. And I'd love to hear from you. So thanks. Great question. All right, from Tobin. I like to buy cheaper cuts of beef steak and sous vide them to tenderness. Great. Yeah. Would you recommend grilling them for a seal rather than frying them? Yeah, absolutely. You're going to, and you're not going to result in the same application of heat. I mean, if you're cooking in a saute pan, you've got full surface contact, so you're getting a lot more char per square or sear per square inch than you are in a grill, which is that ambient heat, that rising heat. That said, however, you're not going to. I mean, it's a completely different recipe even at that point because you're getting so much of a different flavor off of the grill. But a question for you, Tobin. I'm curious because what I've come to understand is when I first started sous videing things, it was sear and then sous vide. But what I've come to really understand is that the beauty of it is to sous vide the raw product, and then once it is fully tender and cooked, to bring it out, pat it off, and then grill it. So you're grilling this perfectly cooked piece of tender beef or sauteing it. And really all you're doing is adding flavor at that point rather than really kicking off or furthering the cooking process. You're really using that finishing process to add flavor. So that's what I recommend. But grilling. But certainly if you're going to grill for that short amount of time and for the sole purpose of flavor, do it over charcoal or wood, not over gas. I just don't think it's going to be. Just do it on a saute pan instead of cooking over gas grill in that instance. So, all right. Hey, great question. Thanks, Tobin. All right, from Shruti, and this will be the last question of the day. Thank you for your really valuable insights. Really motivated now and feel more confident about grilling. Awesome. Hopefully we'll have less dried overcooked grilled meats now. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Well, hey, all of you, thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you spending your time with us. Please join us here at this time every Thursday. We're doing grilling all this month. We do a lot of seafood stuff, though. Check out our course on Rouxbe called seafoodliteracy.com. And also, in the coming weeks, my wife and I are having our second child, so I'm going to be in and out. But part of it is that we are going to be taking questions from you in advance. Excuse me, lost my voice right at the very end. Anyway, we're going to be taking. We'll send you an email. I think I'm done. I can't get it out. Happy 4th to y'all. Take good care. See ya.